Welcome back to the ADHD and Human Design podcast, my friends, and Happy New Year. And also, welcome to all the new community members we've made over the holidays. I am truly honored to have you here, and I deeply desire for this information to make you feel seen, maybe for the first time in your entire life. And you'll hear more about my story if you listen to the podcast and follow me on the YouTube channel. But I really believe in the power of finding the intersection of ADHD and human design. So, welcome. My one ask before we get started is if you're on the podcast or the YouTube channel, make sure to like, subscribe. If you enjoy the content, leave a review on the YouTube channel or the podcast, and please share with others. My desire for 2025 is to have this content start to make an impact on the medical community and to start opening up discussion with psychiatrists and researchers so that we can start to actually understand us and our brain on a deeper level. So the more you share, the more we get this out there, the more other ADHDers will feel heard and the more other people can understand us as well. And one thing I also want to say, another thing is a lot of men found me over the holidays, and welcome to the community. I do have a lot of content that tends to lean to speaking more towards women's perception and experience with ADHD. And because you're here and because there's been such an interest from men in the community over the holidays, I'm committed to creating more content that is speaking directly to men and women, not just women's experience. So welcome. I see you. I appreciate you. And let's make 2025 our best year yet. Are you ready for it? Today, we are diving into executive function and the sacral. I know I speak a lot about the sacral and, in particular, manifesting generators for a couple of reasons. One, we're looking at 70% of the population. And even Ra Ruhu, when he brought human design forward, he had said, I'm speaking to the generators. He had so much information for the generators. And he said, I'm speaking to the generators in the hopes to wake them up, and then they can go and wake up other people. And, there's something to be said for so many manifesting generators and generators out there, and not just out there at 70% of the population, but also I would say the majority of just really bad, dangerous ADHD and human design information that circulates the interwebs is directed at, well, in particular, manifesting generators. However, those that have a defined sacral. One of the things I see the most that it just irks me. And that's when I knew I needed to stop just talking about this behind the scenes and start making it public and go public with this, is people saying that impulsivity is your superpower because you're following your sacral. And I've created other content on why that's not true. However, I wanted to, again, just contrast it for you to show why that is actually dangerous and why that is not impulsivity and what happens in the brain due to executive function deficits and dysfunction is not the same as following inner authority. It's not the same as something being aligned. And this is why I find so many ADHDers find human design and they either think, well, this is crap after a while, right? Like I found this thing and I felt so seen. And then I'm still making the same mistakes and I'm still messing up and my life isn't getting any better. So this is obviously crap. Or it just leads to misperceptions of who you are. And again, it prevents you from reaching your goals. So we're going to dive into this today. However, I did say if you do follow me on Instagram, ADHD Human Design on Instagram, drop me a DM over there and let me know what kind of content would you like to hear. I'm starting to create more content around profile lines as well. And if you are interested in going deeper into the types and the centers, that's my ADHD and Human Design Foundations workshop. It is the first workshop I've ever done for human design and ADHD. It is incredibly rich in information to help you understand your ADHD and symptoms of ADHD, but also your human design, not self of human design, and where's that intersection? So you can start there. And if you're looking for one-on-one support, I don't do one-off sessions, but I do have long-term ADHD and human design transformational life coaching spots available. All right, with all that said, all the housekeeping, let's get started, right? What is the difference between executive function deficits and the sacral? Because my friend, impulsivity is not your superpower. Impulsivity is leading to guilt and shame, frustration, maybe lost time, lost money. I know all too well about originally thinking that impulsivity from the brain and the sacral are the same, and it led me so far off track. And it happens to so many just like you. When we're looking at executive function, this is going to be, well, the brain, right? We have a deficit in our brain. And that is going to be where our executive function deficits reside, not in our body, not in our sacral. Executive function refers essentially to a set of cognitive processes in the brain, which can cover things like planning, organization, impulse control, working memory, and decision making. Well, isn't that interesting? Inner authority, when we look at inner authority from the lens of BG5, which is the business application of the human design system, inner authority is called decision making. It's how you make decisions. Well, right away, we can see that executive function deficits are negatively going to impact how we make decisions, which means it's also negatively going to impact following our sacral. This as well, it can be like these functions are rooted in the prefrontal cortex and it disrupts our brain. It makes us act, for example, from impulse rather than response. I like to look at impulse as reactivity rather than response. It can cause us to make emotional decisions rather than sacral decisions. And even if you're an emotional authority, your emotional authority is meant to have you wait so that you're not making emotional decisions. Yet our brain and ADHD and the very nature of being ADHD is going to pull us off track and make it harder ultimately to quote unquote hear our sacral. And if you're an emotional authority, so you'll have the sacral defined, which makes you a generator or a manifesting generator, and you're an emotional authority, sacral doesn't have to be your authority. Well, it's also harder to wait. Guys, I see you. I see you. I am a fellow ADHDer. I was diagnosed in my mid 30s, and it feels like life or death sometimes when you are looking for a dopamine hit or when you want to buy something or do something. And every fiber of your being, including your inner authority, is like, don't, no, 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 do it. And you hit the button, you do the thing, you press the button, right? I know what that's like because I experience it too. And does knowing your human design just automatically mean it goes away? Well, no, it's a journey. And when we understand your human design and where you can be pulled off track, you understand yourself on a deeper level and you understand how your energy interacts with your brain. And then we can put the proper structures in place so that you can see, oh, okay, I talked about this in the motivation episode. I'm starting to be motivated by guilt rather than hope. All right, I got to come back. I got to come back. This isn't an aligned decision. And then we can start to see those ways our brain pull us off track and have these structures in place to come back on track. And it's my belief, I also incorporate mindset work into my clients' work. I encourage people to go to cognitive behavioral therapy and I take medication and I encourage that. And wouldn't it help? Maybe you're like me. I have a gate 48, so I'm all about depth. Wouldn't it help to know why you keep doing the damn thing? Wouldn't it be nice to know why you, for example, keep seeking skills and no matter how many certifications you get, it's not enough? And then to have the tools in place to recognize what your strengths actually are so that you can shore up or you can stop shoring up your weaknesses and start leveraging your strengths. I know for me, that was a game changer. Doesn't mean that it goes away, the ADHD brain, just like taking medication is not going to be the magic answer. Human design is not going to be the magic answer. And to me, it's a lot more personalized support and an individualistic view of our experience with ADHD rather than just saying, well, have productivity tools and have a calendar and work on your mindset. Those things are great as well. And I find human design just helps us see the ways to utilize traditional approaches to ADHD in a way that works for us personally. Now, how it works with executive function, I want you to think of it as being top down. Now, there has been a lot of interest in the last few years in bottom up, even, and we hear about that within somatic experiencing. That's something I've spent a lot of time getting certifications in as well. And because I believe in connecting the mind body system, and that's what human design allows us to do. Executive function, however, is top down. It's brain driven systems. Executive functioning is going to involve, again, that analyzing, weighing the pros and cons, predicting outcomes, and deciding on actions based on logic, experience, and context. And this is where people get a little bit confused with the sacral, okay? Because I'll have people say, but Ashley, I thought I'm just supposed to follow my strategy and authority. Well, yes, and a lot of people, again, are simply following impulse and reactivity to boredom, seeking novelty, etc., and calling it the sacral. For a sacral response, how I work with my clients very often is let's break it down. So you might have, for example, this impulse to quit your job, right? You have this impulse, I'm just going to quit my job, screw my boss, I'm not going in tomorrow, I'm going to start a business. Okay, let's take a step back. We don't want to react. Maybe you just got an email that really ticked you off, right? You're like, screw them, I'm just not coming back. Been there, don't worry. All right, let's take a step back. When it comes to weighing pros and cons, we can also do this in a way that's sacrally aligned. How? Okay. I might say to my client, okay, perfect. So you want to leave your job. It's aligned to leave your job. Uh-huh. Great. Is now the right time to leave? Or let's take it separate back. Do you have 6 months of savings to leave your job and start your business? Uh-uh. Are you going to feel secure in leaving your job right now and starting a business? Because it's not to say it's wrong, right? It's not to say it's wrong. I did that. I walked out on my job one day. It's like, screw this. I don't have savings, but I'm doing it anyway. So will you feel secure and will your nervous system feel safe if you leave today? Uh-uh. Okay. So what I'm hearing is that it is aligned to leave your job, but not right now. Uh-huh. Perfect. What would it feel aligned for you if we create a strategy so that in 6 months you're able to walk out of your job and start your business? Uh-huh. See, so there are nuances available, and the incredible thing about the sacral is it's really the only inner authority where you can kind of have that conversation with. But we tend to, as ADHDers, we just make that impulse, right? And we jump. And Ra Ur, who created or downloaded the human design system, I've used an example once. This is going back a long time, and it was something around someone seeing a flyer for a play, right? And so you see the flyer for the play, and you go, "Uh-huh," and so you assume that's what you're meant to do is like buy a ticket for the play and go see the play. But then you see the play, and you're like, "This is crap. Like, why did I respond to this?" Well, if you had gone through the process, the might not have been to go see the play. It might have been, you really like the colors. I don't know. You really like the typography. You really like the actors that were in it, but you could have been responding to something very different than the flyer itself in terms of like, go see the play. So when we're looking at the sacral response, one of the things I do most with my sacral clients is let's break it down. And in breaking it down as well, it interrupts that impulse and reactivity that we're so used to, right? That knee jerk, I'm pissed off, I'm emotionally charged, I'm bored, I'm seeking dopamine, or I'm just being impulsive and jumping into something and then regretting it. It's not to say that thing is wrong or that it's even unaligned, but let's look at the pros and cons. I tend to ask and work very hard that my sacral clients are getting a lot of yes no questions versus open ended, because when we get open ended questions we tend to just naturally put ourselves in our head center as well, right? And then when we're in our head center thinking about things that don't matter, maybe operating through the not self, we start to get in a should, need, have to, or as an ADHD perspective, we just push ourselves back into like an emotionally charged, emotionally dysregulated place. We're like, but I hate my boss, and so I'm not going in again, which isn't necessarily aligned. And again, in that scenario, that's what I did. I was just like, I am peace. I'm not going back in. It's about 6 years ago. And I didn't. And that risk taking is one of the beautiful strengths of ADHDers. It's also what makes us incredible entrepreneurs. It makes us very successful in many ways, and it puts us at risk, right? So that's also that risk taking can be gambling, for example, or addictions, but there's a whole risk realm that we can get into that either works out good or works out bad. And following the strategy and authority can help us ensure that even if we are taking risk, it's the right risk for us and our nervous system can handle it. Some people's nervous systems are able to handle a lot of risk and they can still show up and they can still serve and they can still do the things. But if someone's already dysregulated and really struggling and maybe in fight flight and their nervous system's maxed out, quitting your job and trying to start a business likely isn't the right time for that. And it's more than likely going to push you over into more dysregulation. ADHD impact. So for individuals with ADHD, executive function can feel, like a noisy, so executive function issues, noisy, chaotic boardroom. And I used to describe it as having like 100 browsers open in my brain, right? The executive function and dysfunction, the impact ADHD has on, and our deficits has on executive function. It feels like a noisy boardroom, or it feels like, you're at a concert and there's so many noises coming and you just can't focus, which can also impact your ability to hear your inner authority, which can impact our ability to make aligned decisions. Ultimately, I used to always joke that I had I had a friend when I was working as a personal trainer. I left counseling and started my personal training business. I actually got into personal training, a little bit of a history on me. I got into personal training because I saw the benefits of health and wellness on mental health. And that's actually why I originally got certified as a holistic nutritionist and personal trainer. I was helping young girls and kids and adults that I was working with their training, their nutrition. And I saw such a strong correlation between activity and eating healthy and mental health. Anyway, it's a little bit of a history lesson on me and how I got into that. However, when I was working at a big box gym, I had a friend that was a yoga instructor, and she'd said, Ashley, just come to my yoga class. You always say you're stressed out. You always say that you got a million things on the go. It's going to be good for you to relax. And I'll never forget. And I just looked at her and I said, you want me to sit in a quiet room when it is already noisy up here and there's 100 browsers open and I can't get a moment of silence in my head. And you want me to sit in a quiet room where that's going to be amplified? You're crazy. Now, needless to say, now I love yoga, and yin yoga is one of my favorites, a daily staple in my life and routine. And I meditate every day. However, then when I was dysregulated, my ADHD wasn't being dealt with. I didn't even know I had ADHD at the time. And, I wasn't living an aligned life. The reality was, with that executive function dysfunction and deficit, my brain was always so noisy. And I'm sure you can relate to that. And it was chaotic. I felt like I had 100 browsers open and I was always reacting rather than responding. And that's going to be the main difference you're going to hear me say in regards to the sacral is you're reacting from your brain, from feeling slighted, feeling rejected, boredom, etc. You're reacting from the brain rather than responding from the body. And so from that reactivity, where it's being led to impulsivity, difficulty following through on plans. And again, this is also where that difficulty following through on plans is where you see so many people say, ADHD and manifesting generators, it's the same thing because, ADHDers struggle to follow through on plans, but manifesting generators do as well. No, manifesting generators, I want you to think of this. Manifesting generators are express builders, which is the BG5 terminology for a manifesting generator. You just build things faster than pure generators. That's it. I want you to think of this. If you were building a house, as an express builder, you're likely going to get maybe 5 houses built in the time it takes a pure builder to build one. However, if you are always having difficulty following through on things and you keep stopping and going, or you get bored of building those houses and you're like, oh, I've been a builder for a year now. This is exhausting. Like now I want to be a pilot. Those houses are never going to get built. That's not a manifesting generator. That's ADHD. That's executive function issues, right? That's boredom. That's seeking novelty. That's all the noise we have in our brain. And if we look at it, the intersection of ADHD and human design, it's also the not self is what we call it in human design. It's not you, it's a not self. In BG5, we call it the distraction or shadow. But that's not the aligned manifesting generator. The manifesting generator is like, why does it take the pure builder a year to build a house and I've got 10 houses up in a year? That's the difference. All right. But when we're living our lives through being dysregulated or not understanding the difference, we start to react from impulsivity and just react to different aspects of our brain and then wonder why things aren't getting better for us. So I want you to think of it. Top down is going to be your brain. Top down is going to be your ADHD. You don't get rid of it with human design, my friend. I'm sorry. I wish I could promise you do. you just start to understand yourself on a deeper level, and then you start to see where you are personally pulled off track. Now, generators, again, are 70% of the population. Your strategy is to respond. If you have an emotional authority, you respond yes or no, and then you wait. How long do you wait? Well, until you have clarity. How much clarity? 60%, 60%, which also can feel, I find, for especially high performers, type A personalities, and yeah, just high performing type A personalities, that can be a lot in of itself in your deconditioning process of wait, what? Because there's this, especially growing up ADHD, we do tend to find that we were successful because we were trying to control things, right? We had control, we were coping, we were masking, we had all these things. And now I'm saying it's only going to be 60% sure. And the idea is with the emotional wave, you're waiting until it's neutral, right? Whereas the ADHDer is acting off of impulse, acting off of emotions, emotional dysregulation. The emotional wave, you're waiting. You are not making a decision because you're bored. Sorry. You're not making a decision because you're really excited about something and it sounds so good. Neither of those things are why you are making decisions. Our aura is open and enveloping, which means that we kind of like pull life to us, right? And that's how we can respond. We pull life to us and we respond to it. How, like, the nuances of the sacral are going to be different for everyone and depends on your activations. So what the quote unquote, what am I responding to is, well, the answer is depends on your design. Our signature is satisfaction. And when we look at that, it's just a feeling, right? You go to bed at night, you're like, I used my energy in a way that is satisfying today. And the not self theme is frustration. And when we don't use our energy properly, what you often hear with generators and manifesting generators is like they're the yes men, yes women, right? They're just saying yes to things that aren't correct. And with ADHD, it might be, that's crossing your boundary, but you're saying yes to it because you don't want to trigger others, or you don't want to be rejected, or you don't want people to think you're rude or mean. So now you're crossing your boundary, saying yes to something that was never right for you in the first place because of ADHD. Right? And again, it's going to be different based on your unique chart, how that shows up. But when we understand it, we can take our power back. When we understand, oh my goodness, this is the mechanics of it. These are the mechanics below my conscious awareness that are driving my ADHD. You really get to take back so much personal power. An analogy that's used or was used at the International Human Design School that I wanted to share with you in regards to using your energy properly is your car. Okay, so the sacral is a motor. A motor, for example, your car is not emotional and excited because you're going to the beach versus the grocery store, right? There's no emotion there. It's simply on or off. Now, when we look at the car analogy and the car example, if you drive home after work at night and you park your car and you turn all the internal lights off, so you make sure all the lights are off on the dash and wherever else, and you turn the car off, the energy of the battery is being used properly. So you go to bed, you come back to your car in the morning to go to work in the morning, and it turns over, it turns on, right? Because you use the battery properly. You use the engine properly, you use the car properly. The difference and where people get frustrated is because they're not using the battery properly. They're not using the quote unquote car or their sacral properly. So what's that? You come home at night, you park, and you leave, you forgot that you had turned the light on over, I don't know, is it the dashboard? Over the dashboard because you were trying to find something. So you're in a hurry, you jump out of the car, the light's on, you go to bed, you come out in the morning and you go to turn the car over and it's like click, 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 click. And who hasn't had that heart drop, right? Been there. Well, the battery died because it wasn't being used correctly. It wasn't being used correctly. And because it wasn't being used correctly, the energy drained. That is one of my favorite analogies for the generator, because when you are using your energy properly, there is very much this regenerative source of energy. And something to keep in mind is it's very easy for a generator to get into hyper focus because we are meant to do what we love and be really lit up by what we do. So there is a very real possibility and potentiality for us to push over into hyper focus really easily. However, when you're using your energy correctly, you wake up every day and even if you didn't have a great sleep, I've struggled with sleep issues most of my life. There's just this light to you. There's just this energy to you. There's just this, like, I mean, it's hard to describe it because each person's going to experience it very differently, but there's just this feeling of satisfaction in what you do and who you are and how you're using your energy. Now, breaking down the sacral a little bit more, the sacral response comes from the sacral center. Now, it is based off of the chakra system, but they are not chakras in human design. It's centers, literally what's called. However, they are based off of loosely the chakra system, if you're experienced with that. And it's an energetic authority, which is a motor. It's one of 4 motors, and it operates through the body rather than the mind. Another way you can look at this is it responds to external stimuli with a yes, which is this expansive, the way it's often described. And again, it's going to be unique for everyone based on your design, almost this expansive, energized energy of like when you first turn on the car. The car is still, it's still not excited to go to the beach, but there is that like when you turn the car on. Or no, which is often described as like contractive energy. It will feel like if this, when it's a no, it'll almost feel like if I say yes to this, I should say yes to it, or I need to say yes to this. And something to keep in mind is the pure manifesting generator, that's channel 34 to 20, doesn't have that same sacral voice. It's very different energy. Now, this is going to be bottom up. And I hope this kind of, when you're starting to make decisions, you can visualize this in yourself as you're making a decision. Like, did this come from top down or bottom up? And that's something that tends to help a lot of my clients is visualizing. Where did this come from? Did it come from inside my brain and it's coming down? Or did it come from my body and my sacral bowl and my belly? And that it's essentially that gut response, right? That gut response coming up. Now, if we take the human design aspect out of it and you look at it from the perspective of just gut response, how often do you regret something when you didn't follow your gut? Right? Your gut always knows. So again, we're thinking bottom up, and the sacral response is going to, in many ways, bypass the analysis and logic, and it's going to be more that visceral in the moment. However, again, what I like to do is say, okay, if this is a big decision, that might be a visceral direction that's correct for you. And let's break it down into smaller steps, because being impulsive and leaving your job right now might not be exactly the right move, but it might be a yes to leave the job, but it just might not be right now. That's one of the nuances that I think is so important. And with the sacral as well, it's not necessarily coming from a place of planning ahead, although you can plan ahead. And that usually gets people confused as well, because I'll work with people in business and career and they go, well, how can I not plan ahead, but plan ahead? And again, it might be that yes to 6-month plan. So if I say to a client, all right, you want to leave your job, I hear you. And you're also saying that's actually your brain, it's top down, it's impulsive, you're making this decision. And is it correct for you to make a plan and leave in 6 months? Yes. Perfect. Let's map out that plan. So it's not just you're always only responding to things that you can do in the moment. And that is a nuance that, again, requires you to look at your full chart and how that plays out for you. Yet the shadow of our design is also the not self, right? How does that work? Well, we amplify. Anywhere you are white in your design, you are going to amplify the energy you bring in from someone defined by 200%. You have 2 ways of doing this once we get to that spot. So you amplify, we can distort. So for example, if you have an undefined or an open solar plexus, you take in someone else's emotional energy, you amplify it at 200%, and one way is distorting it. Now you're making, they're in a bad mood and they didn't say it's about me, but oh my God, it's got to be about me. They've got to be mad at me. I said something stupid last night and crap, they've got to be mad at me. And now you're thinking, well, yeah, that kind of upset me too. And now you're emotional and you're making their emotions mean something about you. That can be a big one for rejection sensitivity. And you start to spiral from that place. Who's done that? I have. Or correct focus. Openness is also where we gain wisdom about life. It's in BG5 described often as going to school through your openness, and you can become wise on emotions. Someone with an open or undefined solar plexus, if they're able to navigate the fear of triggering others, the walking on eggshells, the holding in their truth because they don't want to confront someone. If you can work on that and navigate that, especially with ADHD, with rejection sensitivity, that can be quite a journey. However, you actually have such a potential to be incredibly wise on emotions and emotional intelligence and emotional depth because you're experiencing other people's emotions without making them mean something about you, without taking it on as your energy. You're understanding it's their energy, and by seeing them and witnessing them going through it, you're able to gain wisdom on it. Now, the next stage, so we have amplify, distort, or correct focus. The next stage is overreact if we're in the not self, right? How often do we do that? Especially with ADHD, especially with rejection sensitivity, where we have such a deep fear of being to a failing, of being rejected, and with the open or undefined solar plexus, of hurting other people's feelings. So we feel like we have to walk on eggshells. But the not self is going to overreact. And this might even be, you amplify your boss is upset because something happened at work and you amplify their emotions. And maybe it actually was directed at you because you messed up, but you amplify their emotions at 200%. You distort it. So now you're like, well, screw you and screw this job. And overreacting, you're quitting because they brought up an error you made and it causes misunderstanding on both sides. Or so that overreact is overreacting. You identify with the energy you've brought in and you make it your own. Or awareness without identification, right? Like if in that example, the boss brings something to you and you did mess up, you bring that in, you're feeling their emotions. They're, maybe upset or maybe not upset. They're just disappointed. That's one of the worst things though. You have correct focus. All right, this doesn't mean I'm a failure. This doesn't mean they hate me. This doesn't mean anything about me as a human, really. Humans make mistakes. We can have awareness without identification, without overreacting. Okay, this was brought to my attention and I can fix this. And then the final step is either misunderstanding or wisdom through correct awareness. And wisdom through correct awareness can be that example I gave of, you know what, I really don't want to be in this job long term, but awareness through or being present to the moment and having wisdom of what they're bringing to you, the energy they're bringing to you and their feelings and your role in it is correct awareness. Okay, you know what? I really don't want to do this job. And right now is not the right time. So I'm not going to act impulsively. Whereas in the not self, we misunderstand the other's intention. We take it very personally. Rejection sensitivity can be big for that. Like someone gives us just constructive feedback. I've been there. Someone gives us constructive feedback. We're like, they hate us. We're horrible they hate me. I'm horrible at my job. I suck, right? That narrative starts up and then we misunderstand and overreact. That not self, the amplifying, distorting, overreacting, and misunderstanding is going to cause not self decisions. You never make a sacral decision from there. You never make an aligned decision from there ever. However, with the amplify their emotions, correct focus, awareness without identification, and wisdom through correct awareness, you have one, the ability to become more wise on situations, more wise on emotions, if we're using the undefined sacral as an example, and also make the right decision for you. Yes, this isn't a job for me. And no, it's not the right time to leave right now. However, the ADHD or brain's going to go really quickly through amplify, distort, overreact, and misunderstand, and then act impulsively. And it is really ultimately a journey to understanding and seeing those patterns at play. It's why I don't do one-off sessions for ADHDers because I just feel like it's a waste of your money for me to offer you a one-off session for that. It's really important to understand and see the mechanics in play and the interaction between the ADHD and human design. Now, when we're looking at the sacral as well, the unhealthy state is going to be filled with frustration because ultimately you're saying yes to things that aren't correct for you. Now, this is really important. So a lot of people don't realize that the definition has unhealthy states as well. It does. What ends up happening from that not self we just talked about is you start saying yes to things that aren't correct for you and you don't have boundaries in place because you're afraid of triggering others, you're afraid of upsetting others, you're afraid of failing or rejection, etc. You're filled with frustration because you're saying yes to things from the brain, not the sacral, which is leading to impulsive decisions, reactive decisions, bored decisions. You're bored, so you're seeking stimulation. And those aren't healthy either. And those are coming from the brain. And then you get frustrated because of it, because you're spinning your wheels and you're never actually seeing progress. You're also going to initiate rather than respond, leading to resistance. So initiate is going to be that reactivity and impulsivity, making impulsive decisions, making reactive decisions rather than responding. You're not going to enjoy your work often because you've been saying yes to things that were never right for you. You're going to utilize your power in a way that's degenerative and destructive. And that's the car example I gave you guys. It's perfect example is the car. You're going to deplete your energy doing things you don't enjoy or you're not good at, and then you don't have energy for the things you love. Now, here's the thing. One of the pieces of confusion that always happens with the sacral is people think, well, then I should only do things I enjoy. So for example, I work with someone that wants to start a business and they go, well, actually, you just said that, I shouldn't do things I don't like. So I don't like doing email marketing. I don't like going live. I don't like creating content. And I'm just going to show up when I want. Okay, well, what's your main goal? Well, my goal is to have 10K months, or my goal is to scale to a multi-million-dollar business that I can sell down the road. Well, does that align with your goals? Right? And so we can start to look at, doesn't mean that everything you do in life you're excited about. It's essentially the work you are doing, right? Like me working in corporate destroyed my energy. I had horrific anxiety and depression. It was also dysregulated because I had undiagnosed ADHD at the time, but working in corporate destroyed my energy. It made my ADHD so much worse. Being an entrepreneur for me is fantastic because I can make my own schedule. I'm home with my dogs. If I'm having an off day with my ADHD, I'll just reschedule the recordings and whatever I had planned for that day for the next day. It works so much better. Me being my own boss works so much better for me. Does it mean that I have to do things that, I ultimately don't want to do sometimes? Sure. And the overall work I'm doing is really something I'm passionate about. You will become a slave to everyone else's needs and wants in the unhealthy state of the sacral. I want you to just sit with that because as ADHDers, we also tend to do things based on other people's wants or needs because we're afraid to rock the boat. We're afraid to be rejected. We're all these reasons, right? And it's very real. And that is the mind. That is not your sacral. And you're often going to feel burned out, tired, stuck, unhealthy, and you're going to quit. Ra Uru used to say that generators and manifesting generators, so defined sacrals, are the great quitters because he said, the issue is they keep getting into things that aren't right for them and then quitting. Another thing I want to say about sacral beings is Ra Uru originally said, just going to wake up the sacral beings and then they can wake up everyone else. And he said, then I realized that they kept coming back to me. It was the same people with the same problems 15 years later. And I think the issue with it is because it seems so simple. Just follow your sacral. Just follow your sacral. It's easy. People are actually still making decisions from the mind. And he didn't really speak on it from an ADHD perspective, but from an ADHD perspective, people are still making decisions from impulsivity and reactivity or boredom. And so they're getting stuck in the same loop, even though they think they're following their sacral. So that's my reasoning on why I believe he continued to see the same people with the same problems 15 years later, because ultimately it seems almost too good to be true, too simple, which leads to people still following the mind. Now, the natural healthy state of a defined sacral enjoys being busy doing what they love. So you're building the thing. If you're a manifesting generator, you're express building a thing. You do it faster than the builder. You have enormous power at your disposal to work generatively and creatively. Like generators, Ra used to say, we're God's gift, pat yourself on the back. We're God's gift. And at the end of the day, when we are doing something we love, especially with ADHD, strengths of ADHD are just unfiltered creativity. ADHDers don't just think outside the box. They don't even know the box exists. So when we look at an aligned generator or manifesting generator, their ability to create innovative ideas in innovative directions with that generative energy of the sacral is unmatched by any other design. And that is a superpower. is that defined sacral saying yes to the right things combined with the ADHD brain, which is innovative and creative and thinking not just outside the box, but doesn't even know the box exists. That's a power. We're also from a natural state or natural healthy state responding to our gut responses. So again, that's going to be the Now it is more nuanced than that. However, that's going to be the starting place for your, since we're not working one-on-one together, the starting place for your experiment. And the nuances I go into in one-on-one coaching. So it's very nuanced. You're happy and satisfied with the work you do, and you provide healthy life force energy to others and the planet. Because think of this, imagine if 70% of the population and planet was satisfied and happy and doing what they love. That would change the entire frequency of the planet. It would. It absolutely would. And imagine if 70% of the population and whatever the percentage of ADHDers would be within that were able to use their sheer creative force and power and ability to innovate and think of things that no one else can think of in ways that light them up. The world would be a completely different place. You hold an immense amount of power. Now, in practice, some things to just play with. All right. Like I said, it's going to be nuanced based on you, but I want you to just start playing with this. Our brain and the dysfunction from our brain is going to be from a place of I'm bored, I'm reacting, I'm emotionally dysregulated. It's going to be from a place of trying to avoid triggering other people, trying to avoid upsetting people, fear of failure. We're going to be operating from the brain from that respect. So I want you to start in your experiment thinking and just taking a step back, pause, take a pause. It's okay. Where is this coming from? Is it top down or is it bottom up? Am I making this decision because I'm bored? Am I making this decision because I'm just seeking novelty? Am I making this decision because, that person really upset me? And then I was amplifying their emotions and I overreacted and they overreacted and we both exploded and then we broke up and I don't really want to break up with that person. That's just my brain. It's just, how my brain is as an ADHDer. And that's how I made that decision, leaving that person. Right? Start to pay attention. Or is it coming from your sacral? Is it coming from bottom up in your body? Something came to you. For example, someone asks you something external. Someone asks you, hey, I found your podcast and I love your podcast. Do you want to come be on stage and speak at this event I'm holding? Now, there's also nuances to that because I've been invited to things. I've been invited to be on TV. I've been invited to be on stages. And it's oh my gosh, I want this so much. I want this so much. But then I take that step back again, right? I'm saying yes to this overall opportunity. I break it down into chunks. Is this the right time for me? Right? And so breaking it down. So I want you to start playing with these nuances. One, is it coming top down or bottom up? And if it is coming bottom up, okay, I'm responding to this big thing, break it down, right? Looking at pros and cons. And if it's the right time right now, doesn't mean you're not in your sacral anymore. Doesn't mean that now you're not aligned because you're looking at different scenarios and if it's the right time and that you always have to act impulsively. That's going to be your brain trying to convince you that just act impulsively, just go, 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 go. Right? Your brain's going to say it's the sacral, your moment to moment, just go, 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 go. And that's just your brain. And Robert, who used to talk about this, and he joked that when you first learn human design, all it does is give the not self more power. All it does is give our shadow patterns more power because, and this is what we see so much online about the generator and MG, is you're meant to be impulsive. So when we first find human design as ADHDers, often we're like, oh, well, shit. I was meant to be impulsive all the time. So when we're bouncing between things and buying things impulsively and quitting things impulsively, we're like, I'm just a manifesting generator. I'm just a generator. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then we wonder why things aren't getting better. So I want you to start pausing, asking, is it coming from top down, bottom up? And then break that decision down into smaller chunks so that you can really look at, okay, this thing, quitting my job or leaving my relationship or moving across the world, those all might be things that maybe I got a yes to. Let's break them down into chunks. Or you can look at, you know, you had a big fight with your partner and it's like, okay, is it, we're just done. I'm breaking up with you. Break it down. Am I just emotionally dysregulated right now? And made a decision based on that. Uh-huh. All right, perfect. That's okay. Do I really want to leave my partner? Uh-uh. Right? Break it down and start to notice if it's coming from the body or the mind. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give this a share. Give me a tag over on Instagram at ADHD Human Design. And if you want to know more about the ADHD and Human Design Foundation workshop, I have the link in the show notes for you. Or if you'd like to apply for one-on-one coaching, you can do that as well. And it'd be my honor to discuss if that's the next right step for you. That is application only. And it's just to make sure that it's truly the right space for you, because even though I have a history in the mental health field, this is a purely coaching capacity. And I need to make sure that's the correct step. All right, my friends, enjoy your day. Happy New Year. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.